Welcome back. This is Newsfile, your most authoritative news analysis show on TV and radio on this part of the continent. I'm Samson Ladi Enyanini. And this morning, as I told you already, we want to know what the state of your economy is, because there are people who suggest that the president appears to have sounded a bit strange as far as the Ghanaian economy is concerned. And some are asking, was he stating the state of the nation Ghana or some other nation when he spoke about the economy doing well and everything else? Would interrogate all of those matters and the very controversial, revived debate of the free senior high school. Is store going to be sold or what? The MPs asked that question to him directly when he mentioned that there was supposed to be a certain investment decision in respect of the toll. That's the Tema Oil Refinery. Thank you very much for joining us. The show is brought to you by the kind sponsorship of MTN. Welcome to the new world. The Bank of Africa, that's as strong as a group and close as a partner. Lipton Tea, that's inspiration flowing from nature. Star Assurance, that is your solid partner. And as always, my outfit is provided by Latida. And of course, Errata Motors, that's where you get the best vehicles for chiefs. They are also proud sponsors of this show. We are live here, coming to you live here from the Multi-TV studios. This is your Joy News channel. And we are live on Joy 99.7 FM, Love FM in Kumasi, and over a dozen affiliate stations across the country. You're watching us also online at Joy Multi-TV World /streams and listening also at myjoyonline.com. Subsequently, this show is available on your Sky platform if you are in London or elsewhere in the United Kingdom. That's the ABN television. Thank you very much. It will also be repeated on this particular platform at 9:30 tonight, so you can catch up if you missed out. My guests are seated, three of them. The other one will join us. The last person to join us will be Nana Akomia, who is the immediate past spokesperson, communications director for the New Patriotic Party. He'll be in about 5 minutes, so he hints me. Those already seated from my very extreme right, Abdul Malik Bako Jr. He is editor-in-chief of the New Crusading Guide newspaper. Abdul Malik, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Also, Samuel Okujeto Ablakwa is Deputy Education Minister. Good morning and welcome.
Morning, Samson.
Great. Haven't had you on this show for a while.
That's true.
Good to have you back.
Thank you, Samson.
Dr. Nee Moy Thompson is a senior advisor, economic advisor to the president. Is here. Welcome back.
Thank you.
Last week we couldn't have the show, and it was for very good reasons. We had to pay our very final respect to our own Komla Domo. And Multimedia wants to say thank you to every one of you for the way and the manner you showed your love and support for him and for the family. Thank you very much indeed. I understand that today too is when Professor Mariam Irama Ade also takes the very last journey to the other world. I understand that she's being laid in state today in her hometown of Salt Pond. I had a lot of respect for her, and I still do, because she also revived a lot of the mathematics in us and the science in us. We watch her with pride.
Yeah, I'm actually just coming from the first part of the funeral service,
right,
which took place at the University of Ghana, the Christ Anglican Church.
Okay.
And, we all grew up admiring her. She was our role model.
Right.
And in Presec, she was the chairperson of the and quiz mistress for the science and maths quiz.
Okay.
And Presec, a science school, we were always looking forward to winning. And we are the most decorated science and maths quiz school. Well, we've won it 5 times.
Right.
But
I know that history. Yeah.
But I think that Professor Mariam Irama has paid her dues. She served this nation very well. The first female head of the biochemistry department, first female vice chancellor, first female full professor in the sciences in Ghana. And she really has paid her dues. And
I said Nana Kumia will be in 5 minutes. He's here in a minute. Good morning and welcome to the show, Nana Kumia.
Good morning, Samson.
Great.
It's good to see you again.
Thank you. Maybe a word from Abdul Malik also, from all of you about the late Professor Ramadi.
By all standards, and I associate myself with the science, profiling. You can almost very competitive.
Right.
But I'm proud that a part of me comes from where she comes from. That's salt phone, section fufu. Here is road police, and that's Ghana's political mecca. So a part of me comes from there. I'm proud that I come from a place where she comes from. She was such a great lady.
Dr. Nimoy Thompson.
Yes, I pretty much share the same sentiments also. I never met her in person, but it was as if I knew her by virtue of the work that she was doing. When I came back into the country, actually, she was a regular face on television, helping promote science generally, and especially among girls. I wouldn't be surprised if we were to do a little study. We'll see that the growth of science subjects among girls in Ghana might have been somehow traced to her. So we all mourn her. Yeah.
Nana.
Yeah, I came into contact with her when she was hosting a program on television. Yeah,
the Brilliant Science and Maths.
So that's when I had contact with her, and since then I've got to know some of her credentials. She's the first woman professor in the sciences.
Yeah.
Those of us who don't have many academic degrees, we're always impressed with degrees, and especially for a woman. So it will be a sad loss. It's a sad loss, and we can only hope that her life will be or has been an inspiration to young women.
Certainly has been. Thank you very much. Your messages are welcome 1422 to the issues that we are going to be discussing. And you can also post them on our Facebook wall as well. You can send them directly to me at newsfile@myjoyonline.com. Now, I want us to go to the Parliament House and listen to the President briefly on some aspects of the economy. So take a listen to this.
We must change the structure of our economy. We must reduce the importation of items that may have a comparative advantage to produce. I have dialogued with the NDPC that is working on this plan and urge them to come out with a plan that fundamentally addresses this weakness in the structure of our economy. I have specifically asked them to handle the process of drawing up this plan in a way as to create a buy-in from all Ghanaians, irrespective of political affiliation or societal status. I wish to assure this august House and the good citizens of Ghana that, as with the taste of any bitter medicine, this turbulence we are going through is temporary. And I assure you that we shall begin to see the benefits of the sacrifices we are making very soon. A fundamental problem of our economy is that we do not make what we consume. Financing has been finalized for the construction of a new sugar processing plant in Komenda. This would reduce our importation of sugar. We are also in discussion with another private investor about the establishment of another sugar processing plant in the northern region near Sablugu. I have tasked the Cocoa Board to enter into a strategic partnership to produce jute sacks in Ghana. This will begin by the importation of the jute fiber and the sewing of the sacks locally.
Thank you very much. Welcome back. And that was the President, John Dramani Mahama, in Parliament House on Tuesday, the 25th of February, 2014, giving the state of the nation and specifically speaking about the economy, what the problem is and what ought to be done. The President spoke about what you may want to refer to as the colonial economy that we're still in. It says that the basic structure of our economy has not changed from colonial times because the major problem is that we are still exporters of raw material and importers of finished goods. Very, 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 usual of most of our State of the Nation addresses. Now, listen to this admission. I'm going to ask a question beginning from this point. Then he makes the admission that we are still largely dependent on the export of raw material, gold, cocoa, timber, oil, mineral exports, and on the import of finished goods. That is still the basic structure of our economy. Now, he tells us what many people are shocked about, which you should not, that in 2013 alone, the country spent a whopping amount of almost 1.5 billion United States dollars in foreign currency on the import of rice, sugar, wheat, tomato products, frozen fish, poultry, vegetable cooking oils, and, I'm laughing, but forgive me. My question that I want to start with Dr. Nimoy Thompson, who is an economic advisor to the president, is that why are we being told this over and again? We know that these are the basic problems of the structure of our economy. And the politicians come on a campaign platform with a promise to change these, and that is why they are voted for. The president, in 3 times in a 4-paragraph sentence, said that, used the word change 3 times. He used change 3 times. He said, we are in the midst of change. And change, that's about actually 4 times. And change can often feel uncomfortable, especially as it pulls us away from the systems and practices with which we have become familiar, but we are no longer serving our needs, which are no longer serving our needs efficiently. Without change, Mr. Speaker, Ghana cannot grow. Change is what will propel us forward. He speaks about change 4 times in that 4-paragraph, 4-paragraph sentence, so to speak. The Ghanaian people are not expecting him to be telling us that. They're expecting him to be telling us what he has done to change this traditional situation.
I don't think they're necessarily mutually exclusive. It doesn't make sense for him to just come and say what he's going to do without providing the context. It helps to, one, provide a deeper understanding of the problem, certainly a buy-in from the public for us to understand the dimensions of the challenges as they are, because even though he's the president, he's not going to be the only person undertaking that change. He's not going to be the only person participating in the change. It's going to be a collective effort, and at some point he actually did call on all Ghanaians. He said we must all rise to the challenge of transforming Ghana. So it's a collective thing. But to kind of summarize the whole thing, we can put it in what I call three.
We remain a nation that keeps referring to this context of independence every time we go to talk to the people about the state of the nation, the state of the nation which we have promised to change.
Yes, but let's look at development as a whole, which is a process with different phases, of course. In our case, we are in the process, that's what I was going to say, with 3 T's. We can summarize it in 3 T's. Transition, the turbulence that he talked about, and then transformation. Right. So 3 T's. The transition is largely the process of moving from a developing country status to that of a lower middle income status. That comes with its own requirements, institutional requirements, that over the years, over decades in fact, perhaps we didn't prepare adequately for. And whenever you move into a new stage, you require a different set of institutions. That partly is the result of, is what accounts for the turbulence that we are experiencing now. As he said, we've put in place the necessary measures. They're painful, but we'll overcome that. But as part of those measures, or part of the long-term strategy, he's also asked the National Development Planning Commission to come up with a transformation agenda, such that we manage this transition more effectively. against the background of the fact that we basically, despite the fact that we moved to lower middle income country, we are still essentially a neo-colonialist economy in terms of structure. We've tried over years. For some reason, we've succeeded, but not as much. As I pointed out a couple of weeks ago when I was here, there's been a change in the structure of the economy. It used to be predominantly agriculture. Now it's services. Industry is somewhere in between. But in order for that to actually contribute, make an impact, we need to be able to shift resources also to more productive sectors of the economy. We need to be able to create not just employment, but good quality employment, what we call decent work. These all require a process. Sometimes it's painful, sometimes it's uncomfortable, and it's not just true at the national level, even at the personal level. Sometimes we are just so comfortable with what we know, despite evidence that something else may be better for us. So that's the overall vision that he's trying to paint. That yes, we're having some difficulties, but these are the things that we are doing. And I happen to be a member of the National Development Planning Commission. We're actually working precisely on that, a transformation agenda that's going to move us forward. But we shouldn't overlook the fact that this is a collective responsibility. That goes then to the issue of the micro-social aspect of it, our own contributions, our own values towards the overall development process. The President mentioned the equipping of several hospitals and other public institutions around the country, and you want to ask yourself the question, what will be the impact, the contribution of all these equipment? We've heard of situations in some hospitals in this country where individuals deliberately destroy equipment in hospitals so that they can refer patients to their own private laboratories off the hospital premises. Is this the kind of thing we want to do? This is where our personal responsibilities come in, the micro-social, as I said. Recently, we've heard stories of massive tax evasion at our ports. How is that possible? Ghanaians are involved. One of them, which was reported 2 weeks ago, was the case of an Indian importer of rice, the same rice that we're talking about. He should have paid 500,000 Ghana cedis. Through the collusion of a Ghanaian, he didn't pay a peswa. How much would he have paid her? Maybe 500 Ghana cedis, 1,000 Ghana cedis, and yet this person managed to evade 500,000 cedis in taxes. It took the task force to discover all these things. So it's a broad net that the President is casting. He has his own role. The Bank of Ghana, which is an independent body, by the way, because I noticed that people confuse the Bank of Ghana with the government. They are two separate entities. They did their own thing. The government has its own risk. Now the citizenry also needs to play its role.
Right. You speak about the three T's, that is transition, turbulence, and transformation. And I'll return to you for you to try to explain to us why you think the President, in talking about his three-pronged approach to addressing the issues of the economy, his four basic pillars.
Yes.
You know, putting people first, building a strong and resilient economy, expanding infrastructure for growth, and maintaining transparent and accountable governance. He decides to begin with gender, children, and social protection. Why did he give that focus as in priority to that particular sector? But Nana, are you inspired when the President, you are not maybe, when the President talks about new opportunities, or we find ourselves on the path of a new dawn, and all of, you know, those expressions?
Well, let me wish my colleagues and your viewers a blessed day. You said that you were wondering if I was impressed by anything at all. Well, I was impressed by the President using that platform to promote a Ghanaian entrepreneur. I thought that it was very admirable on the President's part to do that. And all of us have been crying for patronage of Made in Ghana goods. And as I sit here, I'm wearing Made in Ghana clothes, and my sandals and all are made in Ghana. But and I'm sure my colleagues may be doing the same. But to use the platform to showcase it is good, because I haven't seen it done before. So I admire that. I commend that about the State of the Nation address. But I am not impressed by exhortations that went on. All of this transformation agenda and the words that Dr. Nimue Thompson is using. What did he say?
Turbulence?
Turbulence and
transition,
what?
turbulence, and transformation.
Turbulence, transition, transformation. I am not impressed for now. And it's very simple.
For now, okay.
We have heard these exhortations times without number. Look at all the State of the Nation addresses from Jerry Rawlings, at least since I entered Parliament in 1997. Look at the addresses year after year. Look at the addresses of President Mills. Look at what John Mahama, the president, told us in his September critical policy statements, September 2012. Just look at it. It's all in there. And especially for President Mahama, because he was a Minister for Information at some point and Communications Director, he's done a lot of media work. You look at, and I've been on some of the platforms with him, and all these sentiments have been said times without number. 10 years ago, 15 years ago. You see, so, and it's been said today, the same words. You know, so I am a little skeptical that if they say that this time there will be action, then we have to wait to see. But the record is not good. I'll just give you a little example of why I'm saying the record is not good. And I have in my hand the statement made in September 2012, the first policy statement, 3-hour-long session that the president had. Okujetu was happily sitting there and cheering him on. Now, when you look at paragraph 6 of the statement, it says, in the first half of this year, talking about 2012, we have had concerns about the depreciation of the cedi. This has resulted from a combination of factors. Last year, we spent twice as much foreign exchange on non-oil imports as the year before. This put pressure on our reserves of foreign exchange, and our import bill continues to rise. Blah, blah, blah. It says, then number 7, paragraph 7 says, Mr. Chairman, thankfully, with timely measures put in place under the aegis of the Economic Advisory Council and the Economic Management Team, we have arrested the decline in the value of the cedi, and it is gradually stabilizing against the major foreign currencies. It says the measures that the Bank of Ghana has instituted in respect of foreign capital movements are legitimate, long overdue, and full compliance would establish a more stable and predictable regime for the stability of the cedi. Then the last point, paragraph 8, he goes on. I have instructed the Economic Management Team to take immediate steps to consolidate and sustain our achievements in maintaining macro stability by executing the following without delay. And it goes, 1, hold down inflation. 2, halt the depreciation of the cedi. And 3, maintain discipline in government expenditure so that we do not incur unplanned expenditure, especially in an election year.
You want to say he has failed on all of these fronts?
Look at the cedi. He said that they have arrested the decline of the cedi, and he has instructed them to continue with the measures to hold down the cedi. And what has happened? The cedi is falling to its lowest value since the last, 30 years or so. And then he said, maintain discipline in government expenditure. In 2012, what happened? We went on to record the highest deficit. So there is a huge gap between the words and the performance.
Okay, just hold on briefly. And the minister, I'm sure that I'm sure that it makes meaning to you when the president talks about new opportunities. I'm just going to refer you to a few things that he spoke about. He says that I have tasked the Minister of Trade and Industry to request that the Exports Development and Agricultural Investment Fund extend assistance to local investors for increased production of poultry, rice, tomatoes, cooking oil, and fish. And this is where we spent in excess of 1.5 billion United States dollars. So he wants to make sure that domestically we are able to produce these things. He talks about the financing having been finalized for the construction of a new sugar processing plant in Komenda in the Central Region, There's another one that's supposed to come up in where is it? The establishment of another sugar processing plant in the north, that is in Savilugu, and he's got a litany of other things that are supposed to give opportunities, new opportunities. So that is where you find excitement, don't you?
Yes, certainly. And well, let me say good morning to all our cherished listeners and viewers, and to senior colleagues on the panel. I must say that the initial introduction which you gave, which created the impression that the president was all upbeat and said that everything was fine about the Ghanaian economy, it's not exactly accurate. There are many paragraphs in the State of the Nation address where the president emphasized that he knows that these are difficult times, and that there is what he calls...
Respectfully, I didn't seek to give that impression. I only sought to refer to a portion of what he's had to say. It's a very bulky document.
Yeah, if you look, if I bring it to page 16, it says, Mr. Speaker, it is for these reasons that we have had to take difficult measures to arrest this trend and restore the macroeconomy to good health. In another paragraph, he says, Mr. Speaker, we have had to take difficult measures to arrest this trend and restore the macroeconomy to good health.
He talks about taking bitter medicine.
Then he says that it is an experience with which I am sure we can empathize in our daily lives. We have at some point had to bear the taste of a bitter medicine in order to restore our bodies to good health.
Right.
I wish to assure this august house and the good citizens of Ghana that as with the taste of any bitter medicine, this turbulence we are all being made to bear is temporary.
Right.
So this is a president who is not out of touch at all. He was at pain to empathize with the Ghanaian and to assure that this momentary period of turbulence will be over. And also to react quickly to the point that...
But his critics don't believe that this is momentary and that this is temporary. His critics believe that things are getting out of hand from bad to worse.
Well, his critics will have to know what indicators they are looking at, because when the president says that this economy is resilient, this economy is strong, we still remain the preferred destination of investors. If you look at all the indicators, if you look at even our reserves at the Bank of Ghana, they are at an all-time high of $5.6 billion. So I don't know what indicator is being looked at by...
I just pointed out to you, the president has said critics long before now that hold the cedi down. The cedi cannot be held. Yeah. It is very slippery.
It is fair to the president to say that when the president made those statements in September 2012, more than a year ago, the cedi was held at some point. The current decline of the cedi, or I should say the recent experience, because now analysts in the market say that it's been held quite in good check. But before the recent decline, right, we all know that it was a combination of factors. Tapering in the USA, the Chinese economy reducing their imports, according to economic analysts, led to a global currency crisis. We cannot live in isolation. We know what has happened in Argentina, in Indonesia, in Malaysia, what has happened in South Africa, what has happened in Argentina. I mean, if you read the financial literature, it is clear that what happened in Ghana we are not isolated. However, the fact ought to be appreciated that when you look at the Ghanaian cedi history, we have depreciated over the last 30, 40 years. I mean, depreciation has been well noted with the cedi. That is why in 2007, July, it must be, President Kufuor knocked off 4 zeros. The cedi had depreciated so much that it had become so unwieldy. And so when Nana Akufo-Addo was in government, they decided to just knock off 4 zeros. Even after knocking those 4 zeros, you notice that between July and July 2007 to December 2008, the cedi continued to depreciate. It had been, the 4 zeros were knocked off, and the dollar had appeared stronger. The cedi had appeared stronger than the dollar. It was changing for 0.92 cedis for $1. By December 2008, the cedi had depreciated cumulatively by 18%. So even the 4 zeros that were knocked off did not help. That is why these discussions must be held within the context of how do we change the structure of our economy, which the president focused on. The president did not want to engage in any blame gaming, any cheap partisanship, because the fact of the matter is that under every successive government, we have had major cedi value difficulties. We have not been able to keep the cedi stable, and it's all because we have not, as a country, been able to change the structure of our economy since the 1920s. Our import bill continues to rise. We are currently hovering in excess of about $17 billion. Only last year we were doing about, in 2012, we had done less than $13 billion. Now we are in excess of $17 billion. It's clear that the import just continues to increase. And the president has identified our comparative advantage, that there are some key items which we can produce here: rice, sugar, tomatoes, poultry, flour. There's no excuse for us spending $1.5 billion importing these items. So he goes on to list.
These are supposed to be your preliminary takes on the broader issues. I return to you to tell us at what point the president identified that we ought to be doing these things, and why we have not been able to do that up to this point. Now, Abdul Malik, the president speaks about his pledge to ramp up, or the pledge to ramp up of our generation capacity, that is electricity. He's talking about the 5,000 megawatts from the current level by 2016. He says that is on course, and he gives us a litany of things that are being done to ensure that in the long run we are enjoying sustainable, sufficient, reliable energy. It inspires hope, does it not?
Well, it should. And it all lies in the implementation, because this we've heard over and over again. But I know that there are such plans. It must be backed by commitment. So we can only judge that aspect when the time frames, the timelines that have been given are reached. Then we can do an assessment.
Yes, he tells you that a total of 534 megawatts of power generation was added in 2013, bringing our total generation capacity to 2,845. And he goes on to tell you what they have been able to practically within the period achieve.
Those figures are not in dispute, but they come from a certain period of time, some of which they inherited. As development, we are all saying, is a process. So if you want to do an analysis of that, you agree this is a continuous process. Plans were laid in place, certain initiatives were taken, some projects were ongoing, and the new government, because government is a continuum, continued it and pursued it to its logical conclusion. Dam is a classic example of what we are talking about. So that's in the national interest, is a plus.
Right.
And that's why I said the future ones that have been outlined can only be assessed within the context of the completion of the timelines. Otherwise, and of course, some of these things face challenges. Even we face challenges at certain stage. So one has to do the analysis within the context of always giving some margin of disruption based on a combination of factors. I'm prepared to go along that line. But I'm surprised you don't want me to deal with the earlier thing about structures. You sent me to
you may. Please
the
go ahead.
energy area where I'm less competent.
Yes, I just wanted to be sure that we're not saying the same thing over and again to start with, so that we get a broader picture. Each one of you taking some.
I appreciate the cynicism that comes with this thing about, look, we need to restructure the Ghanaian economy. That's a fact, we need to. And it's been an agenda since independence. Indeed, pre-independence, even from 1951, when I'm talking of when the Ghanaian began to do something about the political power of this country. So it was an agenda Nkrumah pursued diligently, albeit with challenges and failures here and there, some due to some problems with planning, some with, logistics and international factors and all the rest. But overall, if you want to point to a regime or a government that showed determination and the spirit, the appropriate spirit, with a certain requisite philosophical backing to this kind of agenda, then I would single out the Nkrumah government under the CPP as one that went out there to do things in a very determined fashion. Beyond that, we've all tackled things. We've had various governments who have said things to that effect. Unfortunately, not much effort was put in that exercise, and that is what has built the basis for the cynicism. And let me illustrate. This is 32 years ago. Before this 32 years thing happened, it had happened before. But just to give you an illustration, this is Mr. Rawlings speaking somewhere in October 1982. Okay, I'll soon get a date for you. See, the book is already destroyed. And he was talking about this same thing. He says, we believe that instead of putting our stake in the investment code's fundamental faith in foreign investment, we must put our trust in our own industrialists who are capable of building for us a strong industrial base. A nation does not become great from simply driving everyone into buying and selling. This is a real challenge we are posing to the Ghana Manufacturers Association. It is clearly the failure to encourage our own production in both industry and agriculture that has created the immense strain on our foreign exchange reserves and hence on our currency at home as well. With the absence of the adequate local production, we are thrown into the claws of powerful multinational industrial and trading firms from whom we have to import virtually all we need, and on and on and on.
Right.
Okay? This same thing is what is being said today.
All right.
What efforts do we put in place to ensure that these things happen? And that's why there's cynicism.
Okay.
I'll be honest with you.
Well, I'd asked you earlier the question why you thought the president gave so much attention to the women, children, gender matters when he had to talk about his first pillar of people first.
Well, obviously, development ultimately must be about people. It's not just the GDP and macroeconomic stability. Those are nice. Those are good statistics. But they must translate into human improvements in human welfare. At that level, at the next level, obviously women, being the most marginalized in so many respects, must take center stage. Next to women are children, perhaps the most vulnerable and also voiceless at the same time. They are not as organized, they are not as influential a constituency as they should be, and yet they are the most vulnerable. They're not just important to them, but they're also critical to our future. So it's important that when you talk about putting people first, women and children would obviously feature within that first. Because once you get that taken care of, as Agri once said, if you educate a man, you educate an individual. If you educate a woman, you educate a nation. Similarly, economically, if you empower a woman, you're basically empowering the...
And talking about, he's very proud about the cash grants that were given to the poorest households. That's 74,000 of the poorest households received cash grants within the period. And he's very excited about that because he says this means that now the poorest 74,000 families in Ghana will be able to afford food, clothing, and the cost of basic transportation. Now these families will have access to healthcare and education. Now these families can even invest in some small income generating activity.
Which is in fact the case. They've done some impact studies recently where they found that some of the recipients, some of the beneficiaries decided not to spend the money on current consumption but actually to invest in petty trading. And from the income that they earn, they actually went on to have a much broader choice of consumption items than would have been the case.
And they are receiving between 24 and 45 Ghana cedis per person.
Yes.
This seriously is how we intend to transform and get people out of poverty?
No. That's why it's social protection. It's an intervention aspect. It's different from the broader agenda for social development, where you will empower people. You create the conditions for economic opportunities. There are those who, for one reason or another, may not be able to take advantage of those opportunities. Homes with orphans, homes with people who may be disabled and so forth and so on. Those cannot take advantage of existing opportunities. So you step in to help them. It is different from actually getting people, and this is done all over the world. It's not just Ghana. So these are interventions which are not the same as long-term social development programs. But it's important also to remember that the president said that these people are not going to be dependent on these things forever. It's going to go to different segments of the society. And hopefully, as the economy expands and we create more opportunities, we create more jobs, we create decent work, so that you're not just working, but you actually earn enough, the numbers will decline. But I don't expect that it will completely go away, because it doesn't happen anywhere. In every society, there's always some who, as I said, for one reason or another, cannot take care or cannot take advantage of economic opportunities. But the U.S., for all its much vaunted credentials in capitalism, feeds enough people on a daily basis to make up the population of Ghana, Togo, Burkina, and Cote d'Ivoire together on a daily basis. And that's the U.S., the mecca of capitalism. And I haven't even mentioned things like housing assistance, even transportation assistance for teenagers who are pregnant and other. And these are social interventions. It's an aspect of social development.
Kwaku spoke about the cynicism to the rhetoric.
Yes.
And it appears as a sort of a ritual rhetoric.
Yes.
And there's no seriousness to it.
Yes.
The politicians just get to the Parliament House and they just tell all of us that this is what it is and this is what we are doing, but nothing really gets, changed.
It's perfectly understandable. In fact, he talked about 30 years and went as far back as to the 1950s, but even goes further than that. 1921, when Guggisberg addressed the Legislative Assembly, I hope I got the name right, he raised the same issues. And he used the exact term that we cannot put all our eggs in one basket. And he referred to our undue dependence on cocoa and then called for diversification of our exports. And the whole idea of setting up Takrady and building Achimota, it was part of a larger agenda by Guggisberg to diversify the economy. Of course, he was taken out after only 7 years, and Nkrumah continued also. The interesting thing, though, the similarities here between the Nkrumah period and what we are experiencing now is the aggressive ambition or the aggressive program for the transformation. Because Nkrumah recognized our vulnerability on continued reliance on commodities and at the same time launched an ambitious program for industrialization to move us away from that. I believe the ultimate target was the creation of 600 enterprises spread all around the country. So it was an ambitious program, high levels of growth, which ironically created the problems because it raised consumption. We're importing more than we could produce, and that then led to a depletion of our resources. We faced a similar situation now where strong growth, especially starting in 2011, led to a surge in incomes and therefore a surge in consumption. If you look at the numbers for imports last year, there are three categories of imports. Capital imports, imports for consumption, household consumption, and then intermediate imports. The capital imports line actually declined last year. The intermediate imports also declined. The only one that actually grew was consumption. So incomes are still high, and if you look at the top 10 imports, automobiles for private use actually make up the top 10. Right. And they've been making up the top 10. So there's this issue now of growth in income, but then we haven't really developed the institutions such as the fiscal institutions, monetary institutions, and even institutions for transparency. I mentioned earlier the importation of rice and the collusion of certain officials such that they don't pay taxes. So we have a growth in these imports, but through these kululus, we are not getting the necessary taxes from them.
I return to you, and I'd like you to give us three things that you think are being done right to address this situation.
Okay.
3 things that you are convinced that if they are pursued with all the conviction and pursued properly, will not come back to a State of the Nation address that will tell us this story again, that the basic structure of our economy, remains import, dependent.
Sure. Those are, then we are looking at the 3 key dimensions of the transformation agenda.
So you address 3.
Okay.
I'll return to you.
No problem.
Okay. Nana, you had other issues to raise, and I've seen that you have taken a couple of notes. But when the president talks about creating or establishing new local industries, and at the same time, or the other hand, we are seeking private partnership, or what some members of the parliament were saying to him directly to his face, that we are selling off what locally we created. At the same time, do you have confidence in the government setting up these new industries and managing them effectively at a time when we are privatizing almost everything?
Well, to answer your question directly, I'm not in favor of government setting up an industry. The government should empower the private sector. Provision of credit, provision of infrastructure, looking at the tariff regimes, adjusting the tariff regimes to favor domestic production, giving them tax incentives, making sure that there's regular supply of water, electricity. Those are, and then using Ghana's purchasing power to buy their products, and all of that, but not government itself going to set up an industry. We've been through that. It didn't work. Now, you talked about the women agenda. I found it very interesting myself. I found it interesting on 2 grounds, that the president chose to begin his presentation with the women's agenda, because the record is poor. The president talked about the Ministry of Gender and Children, and like Dr. Nimo said, vulnerable sections of the society, and that there's going to be new affirmative action, drafting of new affirmative action policies and all of that, inclusion of women and all of that. Look, a couple of days ago, the Ministry of Gender and Children is the only ministry, mainline ministry, that has representation on the Ghana Media Commission. The reason why they were given that representation is to achieve more inclusion for women. Indeed, the current minister, my good friend, when she was a member of the Media Commission, she complained about the numbers of women on the commission. At that time, there were 3 women out of 19. So it's ironical that today she is minister of the Ministry of Gender. The Constitution has given them 1 representative, and they put in a man. They put in a man to represent the Ministry of Gender and Children on the International Media Commission. So as we speak, out of 19 members on the commission, there are only 2 women, as a direct result of the government or the ministry putting in a man to represent women.
The president was talking about the practical achievements of this ministry, and he was talking about the 74,000 households that have been empowered, no matter how small the money is, who are now going to be able to access education. He said they will access healthcare and they will be able to invest.
You know, sometimes you don't know where we are going as a nation, whether we're going forward or we're going backwards or we're standing still. This thing, this cash transfer that we are talking about, it is called the Livelihood Empowerment Against Poverty, LEAP. In short, LEAP. It was introduced in 2007. It targeted the portion of the population who receive less than 80 cents a day. And the mechanisms were put in place to achieve direct cash transfers to them, with some conditions, that the children in that family must go to school and all of that. The NDC government, led by then John Mahama, criticized it. They said that it was not useful, it wasn't going to achieve anything, and that it was just a palliative. 2007, they criticized it.
Should you not focus on what they have done with it in the present? They have increased the rate, and they are paying now between 24 and 45 Ghana cedis.
I'm saying what you are saying, that when it was started, they criticized it. So when a couple of years down the line,
to give the monies to your supporters to win votes.
I've forgotten that one. They said, this is good. They're going to give it to NDC food, NPP food soldiers. You see? And today, it is the highlight of the president's speech that LEAP, the program is good, and he says it's 74,000 families, and they're now going to extend it to 150,000, and so on and so forth. So, without taking into account the previous views, so you are like, what is it? Are we just taking one step back and one step forward, and so on? Now, just a little bit about the currency thing that my good brother Okujetu was going on about. He said there's something called tapering in the USA, and there's some crisis in the world, and so on. Well, I mean, I don't know if it's only the NDC who knows there's crisis, but I don't know where there's crisis. The times that there were crises, in Greece, in Spain, we all saw it. The crisis has eased. The British economy, for example, is improving dramatically. The American economy is improving dramatically. So when they talk about the crisis, I don't know what crisis there is. Oil prices have been stable. Price of crude oil is just about $100. It hasn't gone through the roof. It used to be over 140 and so on. So I don't know what crisis. As we speak, the Ghanaian currency, last month alone, depreciated more than any currency in the world, except Argentina and Kazakhstan. 7% in January. You see, we've got downgrading of our status by the rating agencies because the currency is falling like a stone, the huge deficit and the debt and so on. If it's a normal thing, they said it's been depreciating over the last 30 years. If it's a normal thing, Samson, why are we talking about it today? We are talking about it because what is happening is extraordinary. That's the plain, simple fact. It is true the currency has been depreciating. But the rate that it has been depreciating has been extraordinary, has been phenomenal. That's why everybody is up in arms, including the government itself. If Allah Sukujeto is trying to compare regimes, it doesn't even help the government story. Because in the 8 years of the NPP, between 2001 and 2008, the cedi depreciated by less than 60%. Between 2001 and 2008, it depreciated by less than 60%. As we speak, just 4.5 years ago, it's depreciated by more than 100%. So even if you want to do the relative studies, it will not help the government's case. And indeed, the redenomination was possible because a level of stability had been achieved in the city. Otherwise, you cannot redenominate. But as soon as you redenominate, it will just be, I'm sure Nimwe Thompson knows more about this than I do. The redenomination was possible because you had achieved relative stability. Otherwise, you cannot redominate. So, the core issues, the import dependence, the deficits, the huge budget overruns, the huge deficits.
Okay, so let's do it this way. Let's do it this way. Nana,
they are dying.
Nana, wait, hear me. Let's do it this way. When I come back to you, whilst Dr. Nimoy Thompson is addressing the 3 things that have been done right, that if they are pursued properly, we will effect the needed change, you will tell us 3 of the things or the sectors that the president failed to tackle, or if he did, the prescription is wrong. Now, Sami, you see, we are being told of new things. There's supposed to be a yes, right? Yeah. Supposed to provide jobs or opportunity for entrepreneurs or young entrepreneurs to be able to come up, because the president gave his good example of the horseman's shoes. That's now. Where is YES going to fit in? With is it 10,000? How much is going to be put into that? YES,
10 million.
YES, 10 million Ghana cedis, right?
Yeah.
And this YES sounds like a sibling of some JIDA. Tell me, how different is it from the YEF? You know, there was supposed to be the Youth Enterprise Fund, which also was supposed to attract some 10 million or so, or 30. What's going on?
Well, it's important to appreciate the distinctions of these programs. Ultimately, these are interventions that are expected to create jobs.
Right.
However, you ought to be looking at the models. As I understand the youth enterprise support, that is mainly for entrepreneurs, people already in entrepreneurship who want to expand. So they submit a business proposal. The business proposal is assessed, and then they are given support.
Yes, it says it's an initiative to provide opportunities for innovation and creation of decent jobs by the youth of Ghana through mentorship and support.
Yeah, exactly. So this is specifically for entrepreneurs. Now, the JIDA and other interventions preceding JIDA, like the National Youth Employment Program, that was mainly targeted at skills development. It was also aimed at getting people some livelihood. So it was not a sustainable measure. It was more of a stopgap approach. So there's a clear distinction. JIDA, National Youth Employment Program, and LESDEP, and the others that precede it was more for, a stopgap measure. You bring in the youth, you train them. If they will need equipment, you supply them with equipment. A lot of times people come in with proposals on all kinds of models that they want to ask for resources. So that is how different it is. But for the youth enterprise support, as we put out in our manifesto, it's actually a manifesto promise, an NDC manifesto promise, that is targeting start-up businesses, young people in entrepreneurship. And you know that the president is on a massive drive to support Made in Ghana, to support young businesses. He talked about meeting Mr. Tony Senaya, Mr. The Beige Capital man,
right.
Agbeve Herbal man, and he had very direct meetings. And you should hear the account of these people. They were very impressed, with the president opening up and asking them to have, they shouldn't consider him as president. They should just have, an ordinary discussion as they will discuss with their colleagues in industry. So I think that is a distinction. But if I may quickly respond to some of the issues that Nana Komia has raised. I did talk about a global currency crisis, which is a fact. And he went into oil prices and went into what happened to the PIGS nations, Portugal, Spain, and others, and was all over the place. We've had various crises, and I referred to the global currency crisis. But I did say that, of course, here in Ghana, we've had our own peculiar challenges, and that there's been a history of the depreciation of the cedi. And I made sure that I stayed away from partisanship. I just tried to do the trajectory and to say that every government has suffered it. The president is now talking about how we can tackle this once and for all so that this will become a thing of the past. So that regardless of what happens, in the global community, we will have shock absorbers to be able to, because even in the face of this global currency crisis, other economies have been quite immune, those that are strong and have very good fundamentals. So that's what I was referring to. And you see, it's important for us to have confidence in this president. I agree with Alhaji Kwekubaku when he talks about a certain cynicism which has built up over the decades. But it is important to also make reference to the history that we had a president like Osajifo Dr. Kwame Nkrumah who defied cynicism, who because of his passion and drive was able to set up over 400 state enterprises that did so well it was after his regime, after the 24th February 1966 coup, that other regimes came and decided to offload them and divest them and all of that.
We are practically prescribing solutions that we've tried before.
Yes, and we've had presidents who have been able to do it. So I am responding to the cynics and saying that let's have confidence in this president. In any case, even if you look at his very short stay as vice president and chairman of the economic management team, a lot of the successes which the NDC government touts were at his behest. He was chairing the economic management team when Ghana recorded its highest cocoa production in history of over 1 million metric tons. He was the chairman of the economic management team when Ghana had its longest sustained single-digit inflation for more than 2 years. He was chairman when we had our highest reserves at the Bank of Ghana. He was chairing the economic management team. So it's important that we have confidence in this president. When we had our highest GDP growth rate ever of 14.1%. He was chairman of the economic management team. So I'm responding to the cynics and saying that let's give this man the benefit of the doubt. He has it in him. Anytime he's talking, you can see that, no wonder he's an Nkrumah, he's the son of an Nkrumah minister. He ideologically is very sound, and he knows the way to go. If you look at the measures,
he gives directives, he gives instructions, he gives orders. Now he's giving charges, and it doesn't appear that they are fulfilled ever.
So you see, it is. I would not say that they are not, because honestly, if you look at the State of the Nation address, some of the things that he talked about have already been done. For example, it's finalized. Mr. Speaker, financing has been finalized for the construction of a new sugar processing plant in Komenda in the central region. That is happening. He says that establishment of another sugar processing plant in the north near Savelugu, that is happening. He has also tasked the Minister of Trade to speak with the operators of flour mills and introduce incentives for production of composite flours that incorporate more local flour from products like cassava, maize, and sorghum. He talks about the integrated bauxite and aluminium industry, which he hopes to operationalize this year. We will come to Tor and what he's doing over there. He did also talk about cocoa board and the fact that we have to start producing our jute sacks here in Ghana. And work has already started there. Then he goes to the board and management of the Electricity Company of Ghana and asks that they should ensure that cables, transformers, meters are procured locally. Remember that before this, he had also directed that anytime procurement is happening in the state agencies, we should make sure that if the product is manufactured here in Ghana, we should give it to the Ghanaian companies so that even if there are higher margins, even if it will cost us more to procure these items locally, let us do that. He's done a similar thing in the Education Ministry where he directed that all our printing. When we got to the Ministry of Education, will you believe something that we were our textbooks that we print in, that we distribute in schools in Ghana, less than 20% were locally printed. All the printing was being done elsewhere, India, Dubai, China, what have you. Now the directive is at 100%. We are moving towards 100%, whether it will cost us more or not. So this is a president in motion, and I think it is up to civil society, the media, to follow through. People who receive these directives, ministers, board chairmen, chief executives of parastatals, if you are failing to act, pressure should be brought to bear. I think that even as part of the performance assessment, which is the first time it is happening, we are going to see a trend where the president will begin firing people who are not, living by these directives that he's giving. So I do not think that these are empty directives at all, and I think that the president will follow through with the full implementation of these policies.
Great. And for you, this is your assignment. When we take a break, Kweku will speak to us. When we take a break and return, each one of you is addressing, sort of at your own, choosing some things that you think are key and will help to solve some of the problems that are being referred to. I would like you to take our attention to two of the key sectors and how you think that this government has performed, with the exception of the question of the free SHS, because we'll deal with that independently. Now, Abdul Malik, I don't know from what angle you want to look at the State of the Nation address in respect of all the discussion so far, more particularly in respect of TOR, what is going to happen to TOR at this time?
Well, TOR. You want me to deal with TOR?
Certainly.
Okay. First of all, we don't have details. We have the policy direction, a decision by government that it's going to enter into a joint ventureship relative to TOR. That's all we have, at least based on the State of Nation address. I don't think any details were given. And as it is said, the devil is in the details. So we need to have some further and better particulars as to what the whole thing is about. I'm not sure there's any doubt about the credibility of Petro Saudi as a credible strategic partner or investor. So we need to come to a consensus. Because I said so because we've had a certain path of disagreements over TOR and how to go about it. Not too long ago, on this very program, I think it was last year, there was a discussion about the same subject matter. And there was disagreement, particularly across the political divide, the two main political parties. 2001, 2002, there was a similar controversy as to whether TOR should be privatized or not. The government intended, as the Kufuor administration, intended going into a joint ventureship with TOR, that is with Samsung. I've got all the details here. And the memorandum of understanding that J.H. Mensah, Osafo Mafu, and somebody signed, the memorandum of understanding was signed by J.H. Mensah and Jean Soura, I'm sure I haven't pronounced it well, Executive Vice President of Samsung Corporation. And J.H. Mensah was then Minister and Leader of Government Business. They paid a visit to Seoul in South Korea and came up with this memorandum of understanding. I would want to read a paragraph for you. It says the undersigned noted that the memorandum of understanding was signed on June 27, 2000. I repeat, June 27, 2000, between the Ghanaian Minister of Finance and Samsung, which set forth the modalities and procedures for achieving privatization of TOR with the involvement of Samsung Corporation. Whilst the memorandum of June 22, 2000 envisaged certain critical steps that need to be taken by the government of Ghana to move forward with TOR's privatization, these steps were not taken. In order to accelerate TOR's privatization, the undersigned hereby agreed to proceed as follows. Question of market valuation of TOR, modalities of privatization, establishment of a trust management arrangement, and came to another relevant portion, if I may quote, privatization of TOR's equity, subject to the completion of market valuation of TOR and the establishment of the, trust management arrangement, as often mentioned, the government of Ghana and Samsung Corporation shall cooperate in order to privatize TOR's equity structure with a maximum dispatch. It is understood and envisaged that the privatization of the equity structure of TOR shall proceed in two time-bound stages of divestiture. During the first divestiture stage, which must be completed not later than 31st December 2002, a minimum of 25% of total outstanding shares of TOR shall be privatized, of which Samsung Corporation intends to take at least 60%, subject to its satisfaction to the due diligence, and the remaining 40% will be taken by other private investors promoted through joint efforts and collaboration of Ghana government and Samsung Corporation. This phase of divestiture shall be through the purchase of a portion of the shares of the government of Ghana or any other mechanisms deemed appropriate. During the second stage of divestiture, which must be completed not later than December 31st, 2004, a minimum of 51% of total shares of TOR, including the share divestiture during the first phase, shall be divested to other private investors, on and on and on and on. the point I'm making, and I have the Kwame Pepra memo here. This J.H. Mensah memo was based on the Kwame Pepra memo. They didn't annul it. They proceeded on the understanding that had been reached within the context of the Pepra memo. And yet, when it became public that the J.H. Mensah team had gone to Korea and negotiated this deal, there was total chaos. The position of the minority then was that no, the government was preparing to sell out Tor to an investor or people close to the party, the ruling party. It became a ding-dong battle. Then the spokesperson for energy, minority, then I'm thinking Honorable Kofi Asante, then held a press conference, gave us an interview. Kandapa came back with replied and all these things, and the matter eventually died. Meanwhile, the NDC in government, the NDC2 administration, by 1997, had begun the process of this privatization, not a wholesale, outright, not an outright sale. So here we are back. In any case, let's put on record that Tor itself, as GAIP, began as solely 100% owned. Was a private limited company, 100% Italian owned. Achampon, it was during the Achampon time that 100% was transferred, shares were transferred to the Ghana government. So this is how we've looked at Tor. I think that is the level, quality of management and the changing environment. You understand the kind of business environment. For instance, so many, the liberalization of the crude oil industry, the need to import finished goods. How we went about all those things put together had an effect. So apart from the management element, which is within, it's an internal matter, I think that governments over the period, the kind of enabling environment, or if you like, disabling environment that was created, combined to affect production and productivity relative to Tor. We are back again dealing with the same issue as usual. I am hoping that we can forge a consensus on this matter and not drag it into a political tug of war as it was done previously. But the way forward is to be transparent then with the details. Give us the details, give us all the facts, let the appropriate agencies of state as well as civil society thoroughly scrutinize the details and perhaps form a consensus on that matter. My final point, please, and this is not to do with Tor, because I thought I was going to have an opportunity to deal with the leap. Akwamia is damn right that it was ridiculed and also perceived as a capital, propaganda capital for electoral purposes. But I think we've gone beyond that. Yeah. But there's one thing that I've been asking myself: who are the recipients? Where are they located? How are we?
They're in the various districts.
Yeah. So I'm asking for accountability. That's all. I'm not doubting one moment. I'm asking.
It's a fair request.
They are human beings. Yeah. They are Ghanaians. We are using public funds to finance this project. I think we should go a little bit beyond the mere announcements of the existence of the leap and the fact that we are giving the beneficiaries this amount, this number of people have been captured by that net, and give some further details because of what happens in this country usually.
Right.
When you leave these things without the accountability mechanism,
we take a break at this point. But some of your messages here. Simon in Wale says, the president simply outlined the problems we are confronted with as a nation without proffering solutions. Oh, Mr. President, please come again. Abraham says, Samson, am I right in saying that the economic theories propounded by the West and what we study and propose by our so-called economists like Dr. Nimoy Thompson, okay, sorry, you have to be careful about that. He's not a so-called economist, he's an economist. And others do not work for African countries, or is the implementation the problem? So that's a critical question you are asking, whether those solutions don't work for African countries or that we just don't implement them properly. Alokus writes, my economy is broke, so maybe I need the intervention of John Mahama and Seth Terkper to fix my economy. Times are really hard indeed. This is better Ghana rather than a better Ghana. Long live Ghana. NS Sampa says, please, the president wants to change our import-driven economy, but change always comes with sacrifice. Is the president ready to lose power even if his change will cost him the election? Baba Adam says, inasmuch as I think the president's address was comprehensive, I really realized that most of the things in the address were we are in discussion, instead of we have done. Thanks for your messages. We'll be right back.